It looks like that has just fallen into practice for years.
And then did you get the letter from Andrea? Where did y'all get those coasters?
At the Capitol.
I want some.
Aren't they cute? Yeah, they're in the gift
may or may not know, the meeting requires at least 4 from each side of the building. So we now have 4 senators. I think Phil and Gain is en route as well. So we'll go ahead and get started with the meeting. In front of you, you're going to have an agenda for today. I think it's in this blue book right here, this blue binder. As you know, our purpose here today is to adopt the committee's recommendation for the FY24 budget. Before we do that, we need to handle a couple items of regular business. One is to approve the per diem expenses for today's meeting. So I hear a motion to approve these expenses. To have a second. All in favor say aye. Those nay, the ayes have it. I would remind you to sign your form there in the green folder and put that out front or to the side for them to collect. Then we need to approve the minutes of the November 9 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Opposed nay, the ayes have it. So those minutes will stand approved. Incidentally, I meant to say this in the beginning. Our Lieutenant Governor is attending by Zoom. I wanted to acknowledge his presence as well. Hello? Okay, there we go. He had a family matter this morning that requires him to be away, but he nevertheless wants to be involved. So he is attending by Zoom. We welcome him. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the main focus of our meeting here today, and that is the adoption of the JLBC recommendation for fiscal year 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve the JLBC recommendation for fiscal year 2024?
I move to approve FY 2024 budget recommendations in the amount of $6,351,869,011 in general funds, $637,566.84 in special support, state support special funds, $17,701,482,408 in special funds for a total of $24,690,917,503.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion has been approved. So at this time, in light of that, I have a brief presentation that we need to make to hit the highlights of this budget recommendation. We have up here a screen that you can see on the wall, and we have new technology which allows me to control it from this button right here. So we're going to see how well that goes. As you heard, this year we're presenting a fiscal year, a budget recommendation for fiscal year 2024. I think our committee is recommending a conservative budget. The budget includes maintaining the 2% set aside in the general fund, which is about $150 million. We are using only recurring funds to support this budget, and we are strengthening the state's financial reserves. You'll see those are the goals this committee had set forth in our previous meetings. Here's the general fund revenue estimate. As you know, we are currently operating in FY23. That is right at $7 billion. So the recommendation for 2024 is right at $7.5 billion. This was approved by the governor and the JLBC at our last meeting. The FY24 revenue estimate is $536 million, which is 7.7% over the FY23 signing day estimate. I think that is significant when we look at 7.5% over the FY23 estimate. That It's a significant increase. Here's the general fund revenue and budget calculation for FY '24, $7.5 billion. The 2% set aside backs out 150 million of that, leaving a remaining 98% general funds is 7.3 billion. Our general fund recommendation, however, is 6.3, as was stated by John in his motion, which leaves right at $1 billion in remaining reserves for the general fund. These are recurring dollars, ladies and gentlemen. So we have $1 billion of recurring reserves in our general fund. Here's total state support budget recommendation. As John just stated in his motion, right at $7 billion for state support in 2024. 55.7 million in general fund. This is 55.7 million in general funds more than the FY '23 budget appropriated. Here's increased funding. These are some state agencies that we're going to see increased funding under this proposed budget. You'll see a health insurance increase of $32 million. We talked about that in a previous meeting, how that was necessary. Child Protective Services, which is an increase of foster home and adoption payments of 12.3. Department of Public Safety, we've increased funding for the forensic lab of 2.4, and Department of Revenue to fully fund the homestead exemption reimbursement of 1.4 million. Here are the 10 state largest budgets. This represents about 83% of our total budget. Most of these have remained rather consistent, rather flat, but these are the top 10 budgets that we have. Then FY '24 state support reductions. These are the things where we reduced funding. We deleted funding for over 2,000 vacant head counts. I asked what that means. They said we used to use the word pins, now we're using head counts. So there you go. So we've eliminated vacant positions, basically. We reduced funding for travel and contractual services, and we eliminated funds for one-time expenditures. So again, I would commend the committee for being very conservative in their handling of the budget. Then here is a list of the available unallocated funds. As you can see, we have right at $4 billion of unallocated available funds. Now, I would remind you that $1 billion of that is recurring dollars. So we're in a great financial position. I would commend this committee for the conservative practices that you've implemented over the last many years. I think those decisions, the conservative decisions, have what put us in this position financially. We cannot neglect or ignore the fact that conservative spending leads to this type of financial situation. We've rejected attempts to grow government over the last many years, and this has been the result of that. So here again, to recap, highlights of the budget. We have maintained the 2% set aside. The funding that we're using is recurring funds to support recurring expenditures. We've increased state support for many important budgets, and we have unallocated funds of $3.9 billion, which will allow us to hopefully do a lot of things. All right, so in conclusion, the JLBC has adopted a very conservative budget for FY '24 using the funds that are available under the current statute. We've maintained the 2% set aside. And as noted, we have about a $3.9 billion in reserves. The committee's recommendation includes full funding of the Working Cash Stabilization Reserve Fund, which meets the cap of 10% of the previous year's That's our rainy day fund, the previous year's appropriations. So those are the highlights. And I want to commend this committee for its work in putting this together. As we know, this is a recommendation that will go across the street for the legislature to debate and contemplate, and the appropriations committees to decide what of these funds they wish to spend. But I want to commend the work of this committee, because you've made a recommendation of a very conservative budget, one that is responsible, one that has maintained good reserves and meets many of the functions of state government. So that concludes the presentation. I don't know if the Lieutenant Governor is available to speak or not. Like I said, he was attending by Zoom. He's not? Okay. I've been informed that he's not this time. Normally, the Lieutenant Governor is allowed to make any remarks. Did anyone on the Senate been designated to make remarks on behalf? Okay. Very good. So, after the adjournment of today's meeting, the committee members will be here to answer questions for anyone who wishes to ask questions. We have handouts for the visitors. Somebody's got handouts. Do we have those? So the handouts will be available for the visitors at the conclusion of the meeting. Is there any other business to come before this committee? All right. I don't see any hands. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting stands adjourned. Thank you so much for being here today.